Celtics and Warriors, last two teams standing in the 2021-2022 season, and they meet in the NBA Finals Thursday night, Game 1 at the Chase Center. And Jason Dumas, our sports director at our sister station, KRON4 out in San Francisco, will be there in person to cover the game. He's done a fantastic job covering the Warriors all season long. He's been out in the Bay Area for quite a while now, and he joins us to preview this series. Jason, let's start with this. The Celtics didn't look like a team that could reach this point. The Warriors are always a team that we know can reach this point. What are your general thoughts as these two teams go head-to-head for just the sixth time ever in playoff history?
Man, it's a very, very intriguing matchup. You look at stylistically how Boston matches up with Golden State, and it kind of reminds you of the Memphis Grizzlies, who Golden State played a couple series ago, and that was a really tough series for Golden State. They won it in 6 games, but I think Boston is kind of a similar team, but even more so talented. They have size on the length, on the wings. They have size in the paint. And teams like that have always historically kind of bothered the Golden State Warriors. And this is a different Warriors team from some of their past appearances. You know, when they had Kevin Durant, they were pretty much a shoo-in to win these finals. And then even before Kevin Durant played, they were so dominant. This team isn't as dominant, so there is less of a margin for error. But I'm just, I'm super intrigued to see how this matchup plays out and the different styles the two bring to the table.
Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green have been the three-headed monster. They have been the constant for this dynasty the last, close to decade now. As time has flown by. Who are some of the other pieces, though, that have filled in the gaps this year specifically that have helped the Warriors get back to this point?
Yeah, Maury, as you know, any team that makes a championship, their role players really have to step up and maximize their potential. And we have seen that with the Golden State Warriors. First and foremost, you got to go with Jordan Poole. He's turned himself into one of the elite scorers in basketball. Many here in Golden State campaigned for him to win the Most Improved Player award. He didn't, obviously, but the fact that people were even mentioning him in that same breath just shows how much better he's gotten. There's nights where he can go for 25, 30, 35 points on any given night. He's that dynamic of an offensive player. And then the other guy I would say is Kevon Looney. He leads the NBA postseason in offensive rebounds. This guy was kind of a castaway a couple years ago. He was always the forgotten member, and this is actually his 4th NBA Finals with the organization, but he has actually become a stabling part of the franchise, and he's been so good on the offensive and defensive glass. He's Mr. Reliable. He has played in every single game this season from day one through the last game of the conference finals, so he's Mr. Reliable. So Jordan Poole, Kevon Looney, those have been the ultimate role players for this Warriors team. Some other guys you can mention, Gary Payton II, the Warriors are hoping they get him back. He's had a fantastic year. Otto Porter and some other names. But those first two I mentioned are probably the guys who have really been the biggest difference makers outside of the 3 pillars of left state: Steph, Klay, and Dre.
When you look at the Warriors, minus 21 in the first quarter, tremendous team after halftime in the third quarter and fourth quarter specifically. Is the first quarter, is a hot start a key for the Celtics to get off on the right foot?
Yeah, for sure. The Warriors, sometimes they get themselves into trouble. They've been able to dig themselves out of it. So I wouldn't say that it is the biggest key for the Boston Celtics, because the Warriors have proved even if they start slow, they can finish off a game pretty strong. But in the same breath, the Celtics should take advantage of any slow starts that the Warriors may have, keep the pedal to the metal, and really just try to get the kill shot out the way before halftime, because sometimes the Warriors do come out, they play with their food, they're a little sloppy with the ball, they turn the ball over a lot, but even though so do the Celtics. So that'll be an interesting aspect to look for, who wins these first quarter matchups in this series.
You talked earlier about Kevon Looney and what the big man has done. Al Horford and Robert Williams have meant an awful lot to the Celtics team, but if you're looking at one specific matchup going into this series, what are you most excited for?
Man, this one might take you by surprise, but this is my key to the matchup. I genuinely believe, and it's just as simple as this, I believe whoever has the better series between Jordan Poole and Grant Williams will win this series. I think the starting lineups for each team are kind of a wash, and it's really going to be whose bench really plays the best. And the best player on each bench, in my opinion, are Grant Williams and Jordan Poole. So I've kind of just stemmed it down to those two players. You're going to expect Tatum, Brown, Steph Curry, Clay, Draymond, you're going to expect them to do what they do. They're superstars in this league, and for the most part, they always perform when the lights are on. It's the role players. Who are those role players who have the best nights and can win when possessions break down and, you know, a corner three, bail out his team at the end of a shot clock, play some tight defense. It's going to be those guys that make the difference, and I think those two guys for each team is Poole and Grant Williams. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on both of their performances.
And in terms of prediction, you know, obviously the Warriors have the home court to start. Do you believe that they'll ultimately pull it out, or do you think the Celtics, who have been road warriors and won 3 games on the road in the Eastern Conference Finals just to get to this point, will ultimately hoist the trophy when it's all said and done?
I do believe the Warriors will win this one. I think it'll be a tough series. I think it'll go 7, but what I think will play in the Warriors' favor is a couple quick things. One, they have the rest. Boston, they traveled from Miami back to Massachusetts, then back to San Francisco. During that whole time, the Warriors got 2 straight days off and then a practice day. And while Boston, I should say, was traveling. And then even though this team has been together for a while in Boston and they're not young per se, when it comes to NBA Finals experience, they don't have any. They don't have any player on that roster who has played in an NBA Finals game. The Warriors have Steph, Clay, and Dre, who have played in 6, Kevon Looney, who has played in 4. They have a coach who has coached in 6. So there'll be nothing too big for them. There'll be no situation they haven't seen. So I think that rest and I think that experience will lend them a few wins and help them pull out a tough 7-game series.
Thursday night, Game 1 tips off from the Chase Center in the Bay Area, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. He's Jason Dumas covering the Warriors for us on the West Coast. Jason, thanks so much for a few minutes. We'll talk again soon.
Appreciate you, Maury. Thanks for having me on.